Life don't make sense, that's when you trust the Father in heaven the most. At first, it's not going to always make sense. But in the end, it's going to make sense. You know, you just got to keep your faith in the Father in heaven. You know, it don't, no matter what. Because Satan, he wants you to, you know, run away from the Father. He wants you to stay away from the Father. He wants you to, you know, just feel ashamed that he wants you to feel so ashamed that you don't come back to the Father in heaven. And, you know, and he want to just make you feel terrible, you know. And it's like, you see everything going on in the news and none of it makes sense. And you might be going through a lot of stuff right now. None of it's making no sense right now. And you could be a good person and you could be wondering, like, why me? You know, why is this happening to me? Why I'm the only one seem to be going through what I'm going through? You know, why ain't nobody else going through what I'm going through? And, you know, you might feel alone, and sometimes you might have answers that never, you might have questions that never get answered, and you're always wondering why, because it don't make sense. Well, it's not supposed to make sense, guys, you know. But let me tell you something right now. You know, like, for instance, in July, you know, I'm behind on my bills. You know, I didn't know how I was gonna even do anything for my birthday. And, you know, you look up, you know, because I have a business, guys. I'm sure some of you guys know that I have a business. I have a landscaping business. And, you know, I'm sure some of you guys, if you don't know my story, but I'm gonna tell you, you know, I had got, you know, wounded and sick over the winter time. So, you know, I had to end up exhausting all my savings trying to stay afloat because I couldn't work, you know. So I fell behind, and it was hard for me to catch up during the springtime. And it don't matter how hard I work, you know, it seems like I keep falling behind. And at the end, after all that, I still kept my faith in the Father in heaven. I still kept acknowledging the Father in heaven. You know, I still kept going. You know, I didn't doubt the Father in heaven. I still kept going. You know, even though I still had to work, you know, I still had to work and undergo therapy at the same time just to catch up on everything, you know, just to stay afloat so I won't lose everything, you know. And it's been tough. And like I say, it didn't make sense for me, you know, because when I got wounded and sick, I was asking, why me? You know, why me? Not to the Father in heaven, but I was asking that to myself. You know, why me? You know, I'm a good person. I'm always doing right by people. You know, why me? Why I have to get wounded and sick? You know, and why I have to have scoliosis? Why I have to have, you know, my spine locked up on me? It's hard for me to do anything. And, you know, I get shortness of breath even recording these videos. And, you know, just day-to-day activity, I'd be out of breath. You know, I'm always tired, and like, it's just been tough, you know, trying to catch up on everything. And then when July came, my birthday month came, you know, I was like, man, how I'm gonna, you know, I was so far behind on bills. I'm like, how I'm gonna pay all these bills and do anything on my birthday? I gotta get the insurance renewed on the vehicle. How I'm going to, you know, get the tabs, renewed on the vehicle. And, you know, you look up, clients was calling, man, you know, getting stuff done. Clients start calling, clients start coming in, you know, and I'm talking about new clients start coming in. And that's how I got the money, you know, to, you know, start paying down the bills. And now I'm good on my birthday. You know, if I want to do something on my birthday, I can do something on my birthday, you know. And, you know, I was able to, you know, do a lot of stuff in, you know, July, which was also, like, it started out rough. This is the key point. It started out rough. You know, none of it made sense, because how the month started out, you know, people was attacking me. You know, spiritual warfare was at its all-time highest, I feel like. And it just feel like Satan just wanted me to give up, you know. And that's why I was saying, he wants to separate you from the Father, and he want to keep you away from the Father with doubt and shame and accusing you and all this stuff, you know. And that's why I'm saying that you're not alone. You're not alone. I'm dealing with the same thing. I'm a living testament, of trial and error, hardship, spiritual warfare attacks. I understand, trust me, but you still have to. That was my little testimony right there that I'm sharing with you, because that gives you a reason to trust the Father in heaven when things don't make sense. When I'm trying to explain to you, the Father in heaven, He always come through. He always deliver. You just got to stop worrying, and then you got to believe in Him, He's always going to come through. At first it don't make sense, but guess what? In the end of the day, I got everything taken care of I needed to do in July. I took care of everything. So, like I said, the beginning didn't make sense. It was rough. And even, it was starting out the year was rough, but right now it's all right. It's all right now. I'm not as worried as I was at the beginning of the year and last month. I'm not as worried because I just stopped worrying, because the Father in heaven always come through. He always provide. He always come through. You just have to believe. You can't feel just discouraged, and you gotta always keep hope. Because in this world you will feel hopeless, and when you go through things like that, when you're not able to provide for your family, man, you feel hopeless. I feel like that's when all the spiritual warfare intensify in your life. Once you not only you living right for the Father in heaven, but you just trying to do everything that you possibly can, all the right things you possibly can do, because you already know it's going to come to an end one day. All this is going to come to an end one day. The goal was never for us to live forever on this planet. So if you ever came back to Jesus and repent and start living right for the Father, this is a chance right now. This video is your chance right now, to start doing it right now, guys, because a lot of this stuff that's going on, even though it doesn't make sense, it's all for a reason. You're starting to see the events in the Bible starting to unfold right before our eyes, and people still turning a blind eye to everything. They still, being disingenuous about everything, instead of calling it for what it is, The end times is near, so you don't want to be the one left, behind. So just always, trust the Father when things don't make sense, because the Father, He always come through. He always deliver. Even though it might seem rough right now, it might seem like ain't no way out. You don't know how you're going to get out of it. You think it's impossible to get out of the situation you're in. I'm telling you, if you keep acknowledging the Father and everything in all your ways, I promise you, man, the Father's going to come through, because I'm a living testimony that He's always going to come through for those that believe.